Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Okay. Another highlight is upon us. And it comes in the shape of Marina.
A large shape.
Okay. First of all, I would like us to give a big round of applause to the person who has joined us today and to whom we also owe the fact that we are here. It's the head of department, Anna Bonola. Anna, could you stand up, please? Thank you. Next, something very practical. If you have registered for tonight's dinner and dance, you will need to bring this. Okay? You can put it away. You don't have to dance with it. But bring it so that you can get into the venue, please. And if you see someone who is not here and who is also coming, please tell them. Spread the word, I guess, is what I'm saying. Okay? Unfortunately, now, registration for dinner is full. That's the other piece of news. We are going to be 143 people. Yeah, I think it's the largest dinner we've ever had. Yeah. Okay. Jack, make yourselves comfortable. Good. This is not just any keynote. This is the Graham Davis keynote. We have a Graham Davis keynote at every Eurocall conference now. It is in memory of Graham Davis, who is the founding father of Eurocall. And of course, we discuss within the executive committee who should be among the keynotes, who should be the Graham Davis keynote. It was easy this year because it is ideally someone who has known and has worked and has lived at the same time as Graham Davis. And this, in this case, is Marina. Marina is a professor of global higher education practice in applied linguistics in the Research Center for Global Learning at Coventry University in the UK. Before that, she was Associate Head for Internationalization and Global Engagement in the School of Humanities and Course Director for the MA in English Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics. Before that, she was the Head of Italian and Coordinator of the university-wide language provision, also, of course, at Coventry University. And after her first degree in languages and literatures in English, French, and German at the University of Bologna, she told me she was sent by the British Council as Italian language assistant, and that's where her involvement with CALL started. Marina pioneered the integration of the teaching of language and content via multimedia in the 1990s. You created a CD-ROM that was adopted by schools and universities worldwide to teach Italian language and society, based on a novel by Nerino Rossi that is set in her hometown of Argenta in Emilia-Romagna. In the 2000s, she explored critical digital literacy skills development through virtual exchange, or virtual learning environments, bigger than virtual exchange, actually. Since 2010, she has led and/or participated in virtual exchange projects, where she worked at the interface of research and practice with partners from all over the world. You are a true global CALL star now, Marina. It's fair to say. Between 2012 and 2020, you investigated how to integrate off-the-shelf MOOCs with virtual exchange to support English language teacher education. And since 2021, you co-lead the research network English as Medium of Education, Multilingualism and Virtual Exchange for ILA in collaboration with me. And that is important to say also with our Brazilian colleagues who have taught both of us how to move out of a Eurocentric epistemological research lens. You have contributed to and organized over 100 national and international conferences, including over 20 as a keynote speaker. You've published extensively in your fields of expertise, and you are an associate editor of the International Journal of Computer-Assisted Language Learning and Teaching and the Journal of Virtual Exchange. You, like us, believe in the transformational power of call, which has definitely been transformational for you yourself. You arrived to the online world from the pre-internet world. But, and you wanted me to say this, you do not agree with Prensky's classifications. You have a strong allergy to the word native, whether attached to language or digital. Marina, take it away.
Grazie mille Miriam. Comincio in italiano perché siamo in Italia e voglio ringraziare le Valentine che sono state meravigliose, tutti gli assistenti che ci stanno aiutando e Milano c'è il sole! Thank you very much. And I always thought Milan was a grey city where it rained all the time, and I'm afraid these last 3 days have kind of confirmed that, but it's still beautiful. And the grass is so green, I'm jealous, because in England it hasn't rained for 6 months. Apparently it's raining now, though, waiting for me to go back. So, yes, thank you very much. And I just want to say as well, Graham Davis was a friend. He introduced me to computer-assisted language learning. I did little interactive exercises, proper drill and kill, or proper pass not, because I was communicative in the mid-80s too, like Francoise and others. And I think it was really good to work with Graham because he was so humble all the time. He was a famous professor, Graham Davis, and he also set up his company. He marketed my multimedia CD-ROM, and it was amazing, and it's such a big loss. So I'm very honored that you gave me the Graham Davis lecture. Okay, so introduction, language, teacher education and computer-assisted language learning. I'll give you a little introduction on what I feel about that, and you might have noticed from yesterday I do get strong feelings. It might be the Emiliano blood or Romagnolo, one or the other, but anyway. So the theoretical framework for my project, Female Voices, the research approach, and I must say, I've heard in this conference saying, oh, is qualitative or we'll do quantitative. Now, can I just say, qualitative can be very good, and qualitative doesn't need to be verified, but it can still bring a lot of good stuff. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a minute, but I also believe quantitative is good too. Mixed method is very good, but you can also do qualitative only and not feel bad about it. And review of the initial framework and interim results from staff enrollments and conclusion and future research. Right. I agree with Plonsky yesterday, I don't think he's here today, and Penny Cook, that we need to engage critically with the world because otherwise we are redundant. And the redundancy manifests itself in very nasty ways in England right now. All languages departments are being closed down. My English language teaching masters has been closed down. Luckily, I'm in the research center, but my colleagues who were still there have all been made redundant, 10 of them. So, you know, we need to become really relevant to the world. We need to convince everybody we're worth it, and we are. It's just they don't know, okay? So we need to make that clear. And the societal impact of applied linguistics is not just what we do with the world, and you know, I do virtual exchange on climate action, and I'm really keen with, I'm working with 14-year-old kids who are very enthusiastic about doing virtual exchange on climate action, and it's very important to do that as well. But it's also a duty we have as educators, if we educate language teachers, to make them aware of society and how we can get involved with society, but also at the meta level, which is not the meta level Plonsky was talking about, incidentally, is another meta level, is how we reflect on our role as language educators and how we can become aware of what we can do. Now, because I'm very old and it's my anniversary of 40 years in Cole, exactly 40 years. I started in 85. So I'm extremely ancient. And I was sent to Coventry. I don't know if you know what it means being sent to Coventry. It's an expression, but I was sent to Coventry. I enjoy Coventry. But the thing is, what I found, and I had a lot of international students who did my master's, over 100, no more, 1,000 of international students doing my master's. And I found when we were doing activities and I was running the module on computer-assisted language learning, they always want to do those little exercises. They always want to do the grammar and the linguistic stuff. And they still do, even if I'm not teaching them now because I'm talking to them. But anyway, so the other thing is the textbooks, the call packages, and that was John who told us. I don't know if John is still with us, but he actually did this nice survey, and we're still very much on written forms, not forms, which is little grammatical items again. So a lot of literature is still on that, even in 2025. Consider the amount of call outputs looking at the above rather than meaningful interaction, context of use. And we know from research that if you don't do the meaningful interaction and context of use, you don't learn the language. It doesn't stick. But there is a conviction that, you shouldn't do that, you should do that. But anyway, so real-world societal challenges, we have so many now. Of course, you have to be sensitive, particularly in virtual exchange. You can't go and do certain topics, so you also have to train your teachers. I won't mention any topics, but I can tell you later if you want to ask me a question. And then the other thing is this idea of the native speaker, and I've said it, but this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant model of canonical English and cut-throughs in a circle, which means, of course, UK, USA, New Zealand, Australia, if you're lucky, Ireland, but not really. So what I think we should consider as well, though, as language educators, things have also changed on the CEFRA. The CEFRA was the same for ages. If you remember, it stayed the same for many, many years. Then all of a sudden, in 2020, we were told we had to actually teach online interaction. That's quite important. It wasn't there before, and I don't know how many teachers know that is there now. And so we need to be aware of that. And of course, post-COVID, we also had to learn all the other things. And now, following yesterday's plenary, AI included is very prominent. It was very prominent in this conference. So we have to learn to do all those things, and they're useful. Of course, in tragic circumstances like Valencia's flood last year, people could continue to teach because they learned what to do during COVID. So it could happen again anytime. So we are now prepared. Well, we need to also train teachers for these risks and challenges. And of course, yes, this Turkish scholar actually says it's the most innovative thing which has happened to the CEFRA. And the other thing, going back on the native speaker business, in 2023, there were approximately 2.3 billion people speaking English as a first and or additional language. Most interactions through English take place in different contexts where English is not the speaker's mother tongue. As a result of the expansion of English around the world, most English teachers' mother tongue is not English. So I'm afraid we have to come to terms with that, and I heard fantastic presentations on plurilingual education, and we have to really think about that a bit more. And bring more Italiano in as well, why not? Why not? We started Cinderella language, not taught anymore anywhere. German is getting there, sad. But also indigenous languages, of course. So native speakerism is a noxious, colonial, ideological construct, which I learned from my colleagues in Brazil. I have learned this very recently, because you never stop learning, even when you're very ancient and 40 years into Cole. And they're not, of course, not just my student who has just graduated and had Miriam as external examiner and others, but apart from Hildebrando Jr. in Victoria, in Brazil, and Kyria, his supervisor there are many others who have been saying this for a while. So Penny Cook, Kumaravadivelo, Kanarayam, Makoni, Renadia, Kramsch, And I was struggling to find a woman, but Gramsci was there before the boys. But we always called the boys, so think about that. And can I say, for the people who saw my title, what I'm saying today is female voices, but is good for allyship with men as well. And of course, in virtual exchange, we cannot not mention Robert O'Dowd, who unfortunately is not here, it's a shame, but he's put likes on my postings in LinkedIn, so I'm happy about that. So the other thing is, so Holiday says, is this idea of the Western culture, which brings the ideal canon of English. And so we need to really have a deep reflection on what is English, whose is English, and while doing virtual exchange, I was stunned by the crippling effect that the hierarchical power of English has had on my students from India, from Vietnam, from Brazil. During a virtual exchange, a group of students in Brazil, 1 or 2 girls collapsed before starting the virtual exchange because they thought we were going to talk to English people. All my students were not English, but they thought that, and they didn't want to join. So I think we underestimate that power sometimes, and we need to come to terms with that. So this is my spiel on that. And I also like Kumaravadivelu. He's gone a bit older now, like me. But I think we have to really think, as teachers and trained teachers, about a particular situation we have, but now we can't afford just to be local. We need to be global as well. We need to think of the practicality. So if you don't have the tools, what tools can you use? And Miriam teaches us how to do critical virtual exchange. And possibility, sociocultural factors which can affect you. And, I just had a doctoral student from Indonesia, and they are so constrained by the policies that they can't really do what they would like to do. But we can work on changing policies together, I think. And of course, teacher agency is a core element of the implementation of social justice in language education. If you're not aware of what you can do, what you want to do, then it's difficult to implement equality, social justice. Okay, now, I've tweaked Miriam's definition. I hope you don't mind, Miriam. See if you can recognize where I've tweaked it. So, the Evolve Project V definition, and can I also say I'm doing something not very orthodox? People don't like to say V and COIL together and telecollaboration. I bundle them all together. I've done, not fussy. I can go into details if you want, but at the moment, interchangeable and synonyms. Pedagogical approach underpinned by research, and I'm doing this as well because I noticed in the audience, 1/3 said they'd never done virtual exchange. They'd never done this type of activity. So for your benefit, perhaps you already know the definition anyway, but underpinned by research, and of course, let's see, Miriam can tell me what he was there before. Okay, no tests. A practice supported by, it used to be. A practice supported by, but pedagogical approach underpinned by research consists of sustained technology-enabled people-to-people education programs or activities in which constructive communication and interaction takes place between individuals or groups who are geographically separated and often from different cultural backgrounds, with the support of educators or facilitators. Very important. The scaffolding, the Brunner, very important. We need the Vygotsky, we just need to, or Vygotsky, sometimes people say. I like Vygotsky. So we just need to be quite careful in how we scaffold, because we can't assume. And I teach this, I'm telling this to you, and I was getting people to learn about virtual exchange in, I think it was Iran, not long ago, and I told them to post in the Padlet. Okay, and I put a Padlet up, you can post in the Padlet. And then I could see there were no posting in the Padlet. And then in the end I said, why didn't you post in the Padlet? And they said, we don't know how to. And I said, wow, I made that assumption myself. It made me feel, all you need to do in Padlet, you click and you write, but they didn't know that. So they were paralyzed by Padlet. And so even what you think is so familiar, it doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily so for others. So I think virtual exchange has deep impact on intercultural dialogue and exchange with the broad reach of digital technology. And I think I've always been of the opinion that you have to make the most of what there is out there. I have created packages, I have worked on that as well, and I admire Anna, who keeps creating amazing things for CLIL recently and other things. And I wish I had the array of wonderful people who can support you. But if I can't have that stuff, I tend to piggyback. For example, I piggybacked on Kate's MOOC to do a critique of it, and also expand my virtual exchange circle, because if you use a MOOC, it becomes a very big environment you can talk to. So, research evidence that we can raise awareness of relational inequalities in the field of language education, and one paper is coming out in the Journal of Virtual Exchange. Where is Mugen? Oh, hi Mugen. And Mugen and I are finalizing it, so it's coming out pretty soon. And it is between Norwegian students and students in an orphanage in Kenya. And it's really interesting to see how the Norwegian students had to rethink their thinking about the exchange. And there is research evidence that we can build confidence for English female teachers whose mother tongue is not English and whose variety of English does not fall into the WASP category. I had Indian, I would call them mother tongue, because they were brought up in English. They had 6 other languages, but they were brought up in English. And they thought they couldn't speak because the variety of English wasn't good enough to speak online. So, you know, we have to think about that as well. And so lowering NNS anxiety, non-native speaker anxiety, I'm using it again, I shouldn't. Okay, so I don't know if Sandra Healy is here. Sandra, are you here? No? Can't see Sandra. Well, Sandra Healy is a doctoral student with us at Coventry, but it's the only other person I know of who has done work on intersectionality and South-North, well, reflecting on gender in research in terms of E. And it is, because this conference is about novel areas of research, I think gender, intersectionality, and female voices is quite a new area of research, because in all the, I've looked at the literature, I can't see anything else focusing. And considering 75 to 80% of teachers of English are female, that surprised me a bit, and that's why I'm addressing it. That doesn't mean we don't have allyship with men, I repeat, with Robert and others. But it's just, it was an unexplored area I felt interested in exploring. Okay, so what is intersectionality? Well, I think here it is a digital, it is a gender difference, it is the pedagogical, it is the South and North. I insist, I'm focusing on South-North, and we try to interview staff, academic staff, and students who have been involved in South-North. And what is South-North, coming in a second, is a Western construct, and is developing countries against non-developing countries. So it's not geographical, it is economics. So this project is researching equality, diversity, and inclusion in South-North collaborative online international learning. And I've just said this, so I won't repeat it. But it is South-North, and we got the South of the North with me, Italian, based in the UK. We have the North of the North with a UK person, Catherine. And we have Lynette from South Africa. She's African, so is she north of the south? I'm not sure. And of course, we got Kyria, who is Brazilian. So we have a good mix of South-North in the composition of the team, which is also teaching us quite a few interesting things. So where we started, virtual exchange is a way of internationalizing the curriculum. And so we drew from Betty Lisk, conceptualization of how you internationalize the curriculum. And Betty Lisk has all these elements, the curriculum design elements, the contextual influences, and the dominant emerging paradigms in society, which can then affect how you do your professional practices for citizenship, assessment student learning, and all the systematic development across programs for students. Of course, V doesn't have to be curricular, but it can be attached to the curriculum, and the various versions of that. But you have to bear in mind the institutional context, the local context, national, regional context, global context. And we find that really the structure affects the V. So if you have support, you will have a different V from people who don't have the support institutionally. And what we thought, the four of us, that there was something missing there, because in our experience, we had the experience of virtual exchange enhancing us in terms of knowing what it is like to be a language educator, being a language educator, relating to people, expressing yourself in the digital world. And we thought it was developing these values and these capitals. And we wanted to test this hypothesis with females based in the South and in the North who are taking part in virtual exchange. Now, why third space? it's interesting. One member of staff who is not a linguist described it to me like a cloud. She said, when I'm in a virtual exchange, I'm like in a cloud. And I'm in the clouds, and I can see the sky, and I feel happy. And it was quite a nice metaphor, I thought. And the idea is that it is challenging. Why? Because it takes everybody out of the comfort zone. It's much easier to be here standing and lecturing you than being leveled in a box, same level as your students and as your other learners. And then it just takes the hierarchy down already because you're in that box, well, like same box as the others. It's transformational because it makes you think of things you've not thought about before. It's made me think about decolonizing, which I've not thought about before in all my years as a language educator. It is fluid because things happen, as we know. How many of you do virtual exchange, COIL, telecollaboration? Raise your hand. So you know. I don't need to go into too many details. It's negotiated, of course, and negotiations is before, during, after, and after again. And of course, it's otherwise because it's these colliding cultures, this fluid space. And what we argue is that it's also a connected place which provides inclusive and adaptive environments. It's embodied because it's shaped, and McLuhan says that as well, the medium also affects what you're doing to a certain extent, is relational and is socio-material, but is shaped by technology, context mediated by human interaction. That's why, I don't know if John, has John gone? Can't see him here. That's why I didn't agree with John when he classified virtual exchange as virtual reality and immersion, because there are humans there. It's not a goggle. So I told John to change the classification, but that's another story. Okay. So in terms of values and capitals, is the idea of equitable partnerships and what we can grow in, the respect for the others, I can't say the word, reciprocità, openness, and the cultural perspective explored through dialogue which foster intercultural awareness and personal growth. And C is not as an indication of class and affluence in the original theorization of Bourdieu. It's more a resource, strength, or potential you can draw from. And if you're not sure about what I'm saying, the article can explain better because I'm running out of time already. Aiuto. Okay. Approach to inquiry. Now, that's where I come. We don't do much quantitative. We interviewed these people for an hour each, roughly. 39 staff and 27 students from all over the world, 4 continents. I'll show you the map in a second. But we wanted to question how women, ourselves included, we interviewed each other, can identify what makes the capitals and values significant for us, and if at all. So operationalizing the concept. Investigating in what situations, including antecedent consequences, in all the nuances serve to add meaning and relevance to the concepts we'd identified in that picture I showed you earlier. I'll bring it back as well. Linking the analysis to any further literature that may support any conceptual ambiguity and determining implication for further research. So this is Herman and Marston Smith, but we're also doing concept thematic analysis linked to this. And we use NVivo for the themes. And of course, we have a decolonial foundation, and I had to catch up very quickly on all this, and I now read Andreotti, Guimares, and Finardi, and Stein, and Andreotti, and see how really the world changes, and is this, we have to cross these lines between continents. And of course, Freire's agency and habitus and autonomy, Bourdieu, capital and habitus, and Freire's autonomy and agency, very important in the Brazilian, South American context. So we did, of course, we are in the UK, main lead, so everything to do with privacy we have to clear. Took a while, and we got all the permissions, and we interviewed these people, and we recruited them via online survey, word of mouth. I told Miriam, I told Moog, I told everybody, and it was convenience sampling. They just people volunteer. So it is true these were passionate people because they were willing to be interviewed. I'm still trying to convince a few others. They're sitting in the front row, and the staff are from the 22 countries, and 7 of them have dual nationality, and most of them are multilingual. Now, can I say, my son, who is the designer of this, went a bit on strike because he's too busy. So I am missing a few nationalities, like Sweden should be there as well. But this is where the staff were based. A similar picture for the students, but I'm not going to illustrate the students to you today because I'm focusing on the staff interviews. And we had very interesting results from the Ukrainian participants, which opened new avenues for me, things are not thought about. So how does the COIL framework, designed by Wim Penny, etc., resonate with female staff who took part in South-North COIL projects? We had one of them who had not, and we won't be able to count that interview in because we really want to focus on South-North. In what ways does the research evidence gathered from this project corroborate the capitals of resonance identified? Social capital, digital capital, cultural, psychological capital. And in psychological, we put emotions as well, which came out in various talks in this conference. So we put emotions there. And trust capital and structural capital, and also to what extent does the research evidence gathered from this project validate the claim that COIL supports substantive equality, which is a nice legal concept, but is also very good for female and gender studies. So accommodation of difference and promotion of the worth of all. And now, because I've spoken for half an hour roughly, yes, I'd like you all to stand and think what you think we found for 1 minute. Everybody stands. Stand up. And you speak to the person next to you for 1 minute, starting now, and then I'll clap when you stop. You ready? Steady? What do you think we found? Thank you. You can sit down. Thank you. Okay. So, first of all, see if anything comes out here of things you discussed. From the students' interviews, we found there were elements we had not stressed enough in our conceptualization, which emerged. And we are not sure what to call them yet. We're still discussing. We call them possibilities, but we're not sure. We're discussing really this. And they mentioned empowering, which wasn't anywhere there. Innovative, which wasn't anywhere there. Transformational, which was there but not so visible. Challenging, we knew it was, but it came out as very strong. Very, very strong. Anybody mention these things? Excellent. So, what we're now doing, we're trying to find out what the staff think and if what they say corresponds to what the students said. And as you can see, we're still undecided on conflict resolution, coping with trauma, where they should be 1 or 2, where they should be in capitals, where they should be in the extras. And should conflict resolution be the same as trauma or not? And we're looking at all the data to make sure we do that. Now, what was the sample? 39 staff. This was their age. As you can see, the mature ones win in terms of use. But it was interesting. It was very different in terms of experience with virtual exchange. So it went from less than 1 year to 6 years or more. So we had quite a big spread of people who did this. Now, we did a pre-survey, and we tried to see what came out of here and how it matched to the interviews. And for them, there was this, the professional came out very strongly. I'm not going to read all this, but the consapevolezza, the knowledge that internationalization is important and we want our students to gain in terms of global skills, democratic global skills, but also intercultural encounters and all that. And this, again, is the pre-COIL survey and navigating differences, making English classes more meaningful, restorative strategies as part of trauma-informative teaching. This is from the Ukraine. Better way to improve English and health skills than learning English with other French students in an English classroom on site with approximately 25 students who remain largely silent. So again, the native speaker doesn't always help. Okay? Now, and the other thing, of course, travel. You can have, for the Brazilians, it was really important because they they can't travel. It's really difficult for them to travel, to learn languages, etc. But it goes for teachers too. So for us teachers, it's very enriching. And this I thought was very nice. As a multilingual learner originally from the Global South, these are all stuff, okay? I'm committed to fostering greater inclusivity and global awareness in education. My goals are twofold: bring Global South perspectives into the classroom in the Global North, create opportunities for US students to engage with diverse cultural and linguistic perspectives. Something interesting which I've not reported today, but I'll just tell you. It seems that there were some critical issues with students from the USA and the US. And there was less flexibility from them, and assumption and bias. So we need to work a bit more on that. And that came from quite a few speakers who have worked with the US. And so we need to probably address that. So the element of enrichment is there in most speakers, and the fact that feeling changed by the experience as a language teacher and as a language educator is always there. So that was the pre-survey findings. Then what we did, we coded, not all of them, as you can see, 8 of 9 staff from the south, and I think half of the north. But it was interesting to compare this. So we coded manually in NVivo, and then NVivo collected the picture. And look, this is the south. So when we say inclusivity is important, it is very important for staff in the South. Inclusivity comes first. Equal with empowering, equal with professional. Professional inclusive empowerment is quite powerful. Mutuality, cultural, challenging, also important. Rest, interesting, agency, autonomy, not as big as I thought it would be. It was bigger for the students. Students felt that was bigger than this. So, some quotes: professional development, research, write papers, another colleague, and this collaboration element, particularly for females, finding that they can create groups of colleagues across the world who keep in touch and publish together and go to conferences together. They said they'd not experienced that before as teachers of English. So engaging with research, which was mentioned by another speaker in a brilliant talk yesterday, can't remember where they are now, but they were, fostering research in teaching practice as well. And inclusivity as well, the transformational element, and it kind of taught me how to cope with conflicts. Right, conflict resolution comes very strongly from the Ukraine again, so this is tied with the pre-survey. Now, the North, inclusivity, yes, but challenging. And I'm sorry, but I thought challenging would come from the South. Why? Because when we did with Brazil, there were always technical problems. The line went down. We had to go to critical virtual exchange, asynchronous. And I really thought the challenges would be much bigger in the South. No. So the South staff feel empowered and happy, but in the North, the challenges are the bigger ones. Empowering, not as big as that. So you see, there was more, if I just compare again, can you see inclusivity, empowering, professional, the first, inclusivity, challenging. Interesting. So we're now thinking about this and reflecting. Now, the challenges from the North, something is emerging, which I've also encountered because I did my virtual exchange with the students in a school in Coventry and students in a school in northern Cyprus. And last week, the English ambassador came away, resigned, because he had been visiting northern Cyprus, which is not recognized by the UK. And so I don't know what to do because I would never get funding official to work with northern Cyprus, where there is one of my students, female students who took part in this project, and she loves me and I love her, and all she wanted to do in her life was to do virtual exchange in Cyprus. We managed to do one round, but that was more or less on our goodwill. I will never be able to get funding for it. So political factors are beginning to emerge more than before, whether it is the situation in the US, which has changed, which is not helping. I'm not going to name anybody, but you know what I'm talking about, and it's difficult, challenging. But can you see, this is the Netherlands, and here's somebody who says the parents are complaining. You can't use WeChat because the Chinese government is looking. Chinese government is checking on us. So this is quite new to me. I've been in virtual exchange, collaboration, COIL for 15 years. This is a new development.
2 minutes.
2 minutes? No. You gave the speaker, Plonsky, 5 minutes more. Okay. So I'm a woman, and the men want to have more time than me. Okay. So, now, can I just say, I'm finishing. The other thing which is emerging from the word clouds is the altering power dynamics. I know you probably have read many times of the sage on stage or guide on the side, but it really happens here. Really, the students are helping each other. Really, the mentors are helping each other. And it is real. It is happening for real. It's not the fake classroom. You sit there and you work together. No, this is tackling challenges. So power dynamics are changing, and you can really be that Brunner scaffolder that we want to be. And interestingly, as I said, was the new emerging theme. Of course, it's emerging from the Ukraine for obvious reasons, but they were very isolated. And I think those of you who were at the conference in Lyon last year could hear how grateful they were. They were connected with the world because of virtual exchange. And, however, non sono tutte rose e fiori, which is not exactly not for the faint-hearted, but it's not all nice, because the challenges are big, but bigger in the north. Something to think about. Okay, conclusion, within Plonsky's time. I would like to say that this experience has transformed me, has taught me a lot of things, but not just me. All these women I've interviewed, they really mentioned the power, this fulguration of realizing you are doing your job not as it should be done, okay? That you realize, and this is a word in Italian and Greek and Latin, it doesn't sound so good in English. So, agnizione, anagorisis, agniscio, il significato è riconoscimento. So, recognizing, as in classical topos classico che risale al teatro greco-romano, think Shakespeare, think Pirandello, something switches and changes. And then you see the world in a different way, it's a different lens. And these tutors who are taking part in virtual exchange switch, and they see the world in a different way. And then they try and change things. So this fulguration, which requires reflection, of course, and discovery of your professional role as English language teacher, professional awakening, discovery and reflection. Conclusion, so it is real world, it's not virtual reality, it is real world. I know, I agree with one of the leaders in virtual exchange, in COIL, in telecollaboration, that don't know why Robert came up with virtual, but it is not virtual, it is real, it is human-mediated communication. And South-North challenges in English language teacher education, challenging the canon, but reflection, it is in action while you're doing, you feel it's happening. And also on action after you can reflect, and for action for your future practice as a teacher. But you're actively involved. It's happening while you're doing it. Sharing good practice on social justice is also a male allyship. I won't forget. We need male allyship. We need to work together. I just wanted to give a voice to these women doing virtual exchange who have not been studied before. And interesting things are emerging, which in qualitative terms, which are very rich. And like Gert says, very, very rich. So sharing good practice on social justice, including COIL, Eurocall helps. I hope Eurocall keeps going for many, many years, because I saw many wonderful talks like Muges Globwelt, and of course Schmidt and Galante, I don't know if they're still here. They were working again, trying to get the teachers to engage in research and think about what they're doing. And future direction, more coding with NVivo, 15, it has just changed again. I couldn't download it for 3 days before today. Anyway, refining, revisiting our conceptual framework, adding emerging values, capital, possibilities, creating an inclusive toolkit for COIL, and accessibility is even interesting. When we say inclusion, when I went to the school, they asked me, do you mean send students, disabled students should do this? And it blew me apart because inclusion I intended in another way, but now I should. So there are many facets of inclusivity, there are many facets of accessibility, and we forget when we do virtual exchange, we should provide materials beforehand. There might be dyslexic students there, there might be neurodivergent students there, and we get so enthusiastic we forget. By we, I mean I too. Anyway, and I think we should work on depowering English, back to native speak at the beginning. That's depower English. Less, every English is good as long as we communicate and we engage with the world and we demonstrate that applied linguists are relevant to society and we can do things together, co-create things together, which are important. Now, there are some selected references, but if you're interested, I can give you more. Can I just say, my colleagues are a bit tense about what I've just done, because we've not published this bit yet. So handle with care, would you, please? Because I had an order from South Africa not to do this today, but I'm very disobedient, as Miriam knows. So sorry. So yes, you took a lot of slides, a lot of pictures. Handle them with care, attribute them, please, to female voices. Okay, I'll sit down and be quiet now. Thank you.
Challenge, the key word. Do we have questions, thoughts, observations? Yes, there's someone there at the very back. Yeah, thank you for carrying the microphone there.
1 second. Coming.
And please speak into the microphone, because after a swim in Italy last year, I've also gone deaf in the left ear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you if you could say a little more about the question of intersectionality, how it is relevant to your study.
Intersectionality is quite a sociological concept, but is how you see the nature of sociological interaction as interconnected. So here you have the gender dimension, the female staff. You have the digital dimension, which can also influence what you're doing. You have the decolonial dimension, south, north. So you're not just doing decolonial, you're not just doing gender, you're not just doing digital, you're not just doing language education, they are intersecting. And you can try and identify lack of inclusiveness and discrimination or disadvantage. So you can try and identify elements in the intersection of various factors which are interacting together. And the third space, of course, because this third space is also part of the intersectionality. So what happens in that third space which merges all these other elements, and what comes out of it in terms of inclusivity, EDI and EIA, because I have to include accessibility as well, so equality, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. How does it happen in that third space with female only, and with digital, and with South tutors who might have less affordances in terms of digital than the North, etc., etc. So does that answer your question? Thank you.
Here and then, no, okay. Amanda and then.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a very interesting talk. I just wanted to bring in another point of view. Here in Cattolica, we do a virtual exchange with the University of Bethlehem, where it's actually a Catholic university. Excuse me for my voice. But they are majority Muslim students. Of course, their mother tongue is varied. Okay, most of them speak Arabic, but not all of them. Our students are Italian, and they're using English as a medium of communication. And it's been a very interesting journey. There, the lecturer is actually a male. Most of the students are female. Most of my students are female. But should we say, for me, it was an experience of building bridges without the ideology that perhaps we have when we look at the Israel-Palestine situation. Because the students who are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, don't have the same lenses as us. So, for example, decolonialization is not a problem for them, okay? They're in a situation where they're living in conflict. To get to university, they have to go through checkpoints. You know, they could have so many, how can I say it? They could have so many things to complain about. You know, they are living in such a deprivileged, I can't even say it in English, situation with no privileges at all. For them, English is an opportunity. It's a language of opportunity. And a lot of them admire British English, American English, Irish English, you know. So I think there is a danger of over-theorizing this colonialization lens, which is actually a very Western lens, okay? So I think if we actually get the students to talk to each other, that kind of a problem is not a major problem for them. What they want, right, and this is totally journals from the students on both sides, what they want is a real experience, what they want is a real exchange, what they want is real friendship, which is totally beyond the kind of conflicts that they're living in. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there because I'm the director of a Centre of Higher Education Internationalization, okay? And a lot of what you've been saying and all the people you've been quoting are the theorists in the field of internationalization, okay? So Betty Lesk, for example, has been on my board for 10 years. That book came out when she was working in Cattolica. So it's very interesting for me that you've made this adapted model. But I do think there is a real danger of us putting a lens of colonialization on a world where actually the young people don't have that problem, all right? I think that is a point of view that you need to take into consideration. Okay.
Thank you very much for your point. Can I just say, though, that it wasn't me, it was Kyria. And Kyria actually told me I had, and she's Brazilian. And so the decolonization lens, I'm not saying don't use English, otherwise you wouldn't be here. We couldn't have this conference today if we don't use English. English is empowering, and English is important. I'm saying don't think you should speak like an American or an English person. I know, they all do. Oh, yes, you can. But I'm just saying raising the critical awareness of the constructs is what we're trying to do. And it was, in fact, Kyria Finardi, who feels extremely strongly about this. She's written masses of stuff on this. I don't think Miriam can confirm. And she really feels very strongly that in Brazil, they get a lot of impositions from the North and the USA, UK. And it's true, because my Nigerian students say we're very proud of our English heritage. We want to speak like English people in the UK, like Prince Charles. King Charles, I keep forgetting. But, you know, it is true that that element exists. It's just, I think, as teachers, we have to be aware there are something. And it's very intercultural, because I worked with Malaysia, where they don't think it's an issue at all, and with Brazil, where they think it is a massive issue. So also being aware of the differences when you do virtual exchange. And it is that in Bethlehem, they got other priorities, and I'm not worried about this. My Malaysian colleagues, they even said, you know, what is this decolonialism? We don't know what you're talking about. So it's just raising awareness and thinking. My colleagues in South Africa are very, very militant on it. And they were very upset that when they did the project with this massive project they did, Ikudo is called, and it was all subjects. Italy was also involved, Siena. And they had, I think, 30 partners, more than 30 partners, and they used English as a language, only language to use for the virtual exchange COIL project. The African contingent were really very upset, extremely. And they said, in our part of the world, Swahili is more spoken than English. Yes. why are we using English? So, you know, it depends on the part of the world. So I think it's important we as teachers, we're aware of that, and we take on board what you say, but also what Kyria says, what Lynette says, and these are the very militant ones. And I'm learning, yes.
One more question, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question, but yes, good point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was wondering about the saliency of how challenging appeared in the North and not so much in the South, where you thought that, of course, it's harder for people in the South. Could be an example of privilege. So for people in the South, it's an opportunity. It's empowering. Doesn't matter how many obstacles they have to go over to participate in virtual exchange, whereas for people in the North who kind of have the luxury of thinking, oh, it's so much hard work, so much time, so much effort to coordinate all of that. So yeah, I was wondering what you think about that.
Challenging. Yeah, interesting. I think it has to do with the enthusiasm they feel in the South of being given this opportunity, that it is kind of keeping the challenge at bay. And it could be, that could be the reason, but we have to go deeper into the interviews to find out. And as you say, privilege, it could be. Yes, I mean, even in the North, though, that there are places where you're not encouraged to do virtual exchange, where there are barriers, and there are people who are very enthusiastic, and they're told, no, that's a waste of time. And places can also change, because we went from internationalization in Coventry, we went from being the first university in the UK introducing COIL as mandatory in every course, and appointing an associate dean per faculty, making sure it happened, an associate head of department in each department, that was me, making sure every colleague did it in at least one course. So we had to a mandatory requirement of having COIL in at least one course, both undergrad and postgrad. Change of management, baby and bathwater. So things like politics and policies can also affect that. And now it is challenging at Coventry, because we used to have support. Yeah.
On that note, thank you, Marina.